Rygar is a classic NES action RPG that I wish I would have had growing up. Great graphics and a stellar soundtrack make for an intoxicating little early-era NES adventure game. But sadly, the rental stores never had this one, and I don't even remember seeing it on the shelves anywhere my family shopped as a kid. Thanks to Zach for requesting this one, Rygar was developed and released by Tecmo for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987, and while it is a little rough around the edges like a lot of the more ambitious NES games from those early years of the console, it really does have a lot going for it, and it is absolutely worth your time. The story here is a bit complex. You play as the title character Rygar on a quest to stop the evil Rygar, who has closed the door to peace in the land of Argul. The land of Argul was founded by these 5 holy gods. But suddenly Rygar and his evil troops attacked the land of Argul. The manual states Rygar and his dangerous beast came down from the sky and committed the most atrocious cruelties. Seriously, the manual is very descriptive. The writer got himself a thesaurus and committed to the bit, but it's nice to see the attention to detail. Really, the manual is very well done, and I'll get to all of that in a bit. So you take up the mantle as Rygar, setting off on a quest to destroy Rygar and reopen the door to peace so everything can get back to normal. So Rygar actually started off as an arcade game in 1986, which was mostly different. At a glance, the games look similar. You get this cool weapon called a disc armor. Hey, you just combined 2 random words. So the disc armor is this shield on the edge of a chain that you can just whip around at your enemies. Yeah, it's similar to Simon Belmont's whip, but different enough to be its own thing. The arcade version focused entirely on fast-paced hack-and-slash action, and so did all of the other ports including Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, Sega Master System, and even Atari Lynx. However, the NES version steps back and focuses on exploration, adventure, and role-playing while keeping several of the action gameplay mechanics. It makes for a great time if you can forgive a few of the game's shortcomings. Okay, so the controls are simple enough. You jump with the A button and swing your disc armor with the B button. Controls are a little stiff, particularly jumping, but for the most part they're as good as you need them to be, and NES Castlevania fans will feel right at home. Did I mention I really like the disc armor weapon? It's a bit peppier than Simon's whip, especially once you get the power-up for it, and I'll explain how power-ups work in this game. So when you pause the game, you get this screen, and here's where the manual comes into play. The manual really is necessary to play this game. On the left, you've got readouts for tone and last. Tone is basically how powerful your disc armor is, and will go up the more enemies you kill. Last affects your stamina. Okay, get your jokes out of the way now. I can hear you all back there snickering. For every 48 points of last you rack up, your life pegs will go up, maxing out at 12. And then lastly, you've got Mind. Every so often, enemies will drop these Mind items, which you can use to activate magical spells listed on the right. The first one you'll want to use is the aptly named Power-Up spell. This significantly increases the speed and damage done by your disc armor, and it's super handy because it stays in effect for the entirety of the game, or until you die once. Most power-ups would only be temporary, but nope, this one's perpetual. Next is the Attack and Assail power-up, which allows you to attack everything on screen at once for a total of 10 swings, and you want to save that for boss fights. Lastly is the Recovery spell, which, simple enough, recovers all of your life pegs. You can also find special items to help you out in your quest, such as the grappling hook, the crossbow, or the wind pulley. The wind pulley is necessary to get around when you're in the overworld. Sometimes you'll see these ropes connecting 2 areas, and you can use the wind pulley to kind of zip line across. So another big part of the game, like I mentioned before, is navigating around the land of Argul, and the maps in the manual give you just enough information to get on your way, but not so much as to make it easy. You could call the Valley of Garlaws the overworld, and then from there you make your way to each of the separate stages, which have a boss and a special weapon you ultimately need for finishing the game. For example, it shows you where to get the grappling hook to get you going, but once you get to some of these areas like Yoruga or the Lapis Gate, then it's up to you to memorize or draw out a map of each of those areas, and they're all non-linear. Once you've collected everything, you can make your way to the Palace of Durago and the final boss, Rygar. So far, I've mentioned the things that work well with this game, and there are many, but it's not without its faults. For starters, the controls are a little stiff, like I mentioned before, and this can lead to some cheap deaths, particularly with the platforming elements. In vertical scrolling stages, Rygar can't survive a 2-screen drop without instantly dying, so keep that in mind. You'll always have to climb up or down the ropes, and speaking of, what is he doing here? The good news is that when you die, you can just press the start button and the game has infinite continues. You'll lose the power-up spell, but otherwise you'll start over with all of your items at the nearest doorway you went through, or sometimes even just right at the last boss fight you were at. Now for the bad news. Similar to Jurassic Park on Super Nintendo that I looked at recently, there's no save or password feature. Now if you're playing this game on something other than original hardware, you'll probably have access to save states, which can bypass this oversight, but if you're playing on original hardware, you'll either have to leave the console running or set aside an entire day just to get through this. I will also say that the game isn't that hard. This is probably one of those games that was super hard trying to play as a kid, but as an adult, I can sit here and kind of figure out the easy way through. You really don't have to stand and fight the enemies. You're better off if you just keep moving and don't try to stop and fight every single enemy along the way, especially in the early stages when your character isn't all that powerful. Just keep moving. Also, certain enemies give you more last and tone points, so if you can find one of those that's close to a door, just keep going through the door over and over again and you can grind your way up to Superman powers in no time. But still, that doesn't mean this is a bad game at all, and in fact, like I said before, this is one I wish I would have had as a kid. This is just a fantastic NES action-adventure game. The graphics are excellent for the year this was released in. Just check out this sunset in the background. The enemies are all detailed and unique as well. Speaking of which, the manual calls the bad guys animalized men wriggling eerily? What? Also, the music is some of the best on the console and perfect for going on an epic adventure. Since this game focuses so much on exploration, having a great soundtrack is essential since you're going to be hearing it over and over again. It even keeps playing while you're on the menu screen, so that's handy too. Also, there was even a Rygar Easter egg on the scoreboard of Tecmo Bowl. I never noticed that before. Rygar also harkens back to a time when the instruction manual was a big deal. Back in the day, the instruction manual really was just an extension of the game. You'd be sitting there on the couch with your instruction manual, a bag of Doritos, maybe a notepad for jotting down notes or drawing yourself a map, perhaps a relevant issue of Nintendo Power sitting nearby. That was just all part of the NES experience, and I feel like this game could be a poster child for that. So if you want to play Rygar, hit the Google machine and print yourself off a manual. Well, what did you think of this one? Did you play Rygar growing up or find out about it more recently? What are some other NES games like this that maybe didn't get as much word of mouth or publicity as some of the bigger name games? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.